Good day everyone, I am John Michael G. Gonzales and I will be the first presenter for Group 3. And our assigned topic is about formulating hypothesis. Now moving on, what is the definition of formulating hypothesis? The formulation of a hypothesis in research is when the researcher formulates a predictive statement of what is expected to happen when testing the research question based on background research. Now, I have an example here who has been a official title of someone's research. Now, for example, a prior research has shown that stress can impact the immune system. So, a researcher might hypothesize people with high stress levels will be more likely to contract a common cold after being exposed to the virus than people who have low stress levels. Now, moving on is what are the expectations that you can achieve after finishing this module. First, you can now formulate possible outcomes of the investigation, or in the case of mathematical research, conjectures about the mathematical problem or topic. Second, you can now rationalize the prospective outcome or outcomes of a scientific research problem. Lastly, you can now exhibit ingenuity and novelty in formulating a hypothesis.
So good day everyone, so today I will tackle about the hypothesis. Francis Bacon once stated, "If a man will begin with certainties, he shall end in doubts. But if he will be content to begin with doubts, he shall end in certainties." So ang meaning ani is kung magsugod ka og doubts or magduha-duha, mangita jud ka og pamaagi na maansiran ang imuhang questions. So that's why mag-research ta, mag-interview og ato ang i-validate kung unsa ba jud ka tinuod. So ang result is ma-satisfied ta kay first hand ang atong nakuha na information. So makabalo ta kung unsa jud tinuod. Pero kung sure na ka sa usa ka butang or certain, dili na nimo i-validate. Pero kung ugnaay mo disagree or dili mo uyon sa ato ang idea, ang ending ana is doubtful na siya kay basin sayop ang iyang findings or iyang idea. So research advances the learning of people. To begin the conduct of research, you need to have creative and innovative ideas to produce a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an intelligent expression of assumption or assertion about a specific phenomenon or problem. The results of the research will determine whether the assumption is true or not. You can look at the hypothesis as a statement formulated by those undertaking the research as a form of speculation based on the outcomes of the research. So maunang sa research, dili jud ka mogsugod og conclusion or mo conclude ka kay wala na pulos ang imuhang mga questionnaires or instrument. Mao dapat mag-start jud ta og hypothesis para ato ang ma-validate kung unsa ka tinuod or napay possibilities na maka-discover ta og new knowledge og new ideas. So that's all.
Good day everyone. So karon akong tiwason ang part ni Yvvan Duyaguit, which is ang hypothesis. Though a hypothesis comes from a form of a guess, it is still formulated in the most logical way. You may have figured it out from the previous literatures or from personal observations. So, ang hypothesis daw kay gikan daw ni sa tagna-tagna, pero dapat i-formulate nimo base sa mga previous literatures or sa mga personal observations para logical ang imong statement. So, to put Francis Bacon's word in the viewpoint of research, initiating a research can be likened to facing a blank wall with so many uncertainties. Sa perspective ni Francis Bacon, kung mag-start tag research project, it can be compared to confronting a blank wall daw nga represents of lack of knowledge and understanding. Ang pasabot niya sa uncertainties kay mga unknowns and unanswered questions that researchers may encounter kung mag-embark sila og new study. So, when mag-initiate tag research, it involves limited or no prior knowledge about the topic at hand. So, kita mga researchers may be unsure of the outcomes nga atong ma-discover o sa mga challenges nga atong ma-encounter. However, once you have completed the whole process of having collected, analyzed, and evaluated data, a conclusion can be drawn contributing toward the achievement of a theory or a validated information. And that's all for my part. Thank you.
Why is hypothesis an important part of research? In an experiment, a hypothesis is used to establish the link between two variables. The purpose of a hypothesis is to find the answer to a question. A formulated hypothesis will compel us to consider the kinds of outcomes an experiment should aim to produce. The hypothesis is essential because it is the starting point for further investigation. A hypothesis may be used as a guiding tool to confirm whether an observation, a phenomenon, a product, or a process can be accepted as true or functional. For this to happen, testing the veracity of the hypothesis must be correctly done. The choice of the data collection method should be appropriate. The analysis of data must be accurate as supported by statistical treatments, and the conclusions should be adequate as sustained by the data collected and should match the overall objectives of the study. If the research process is erroneous, then the hypothesis being tested will be flawed.
So good day everyone, I am Lesley Lumen, and today we will be discussing the impact of a hypothesis in our scientific research. So first, we need to define what is hypothesis. So hypothesis is an assumption that is made of some evidence. So hypothesis, it is where the research would be based off. So in our research in daily life, we use null hypothesis in order to define our research and our study. So hypothesis, it is used to make an assumption in a research paper. So it is what you expect as a result of your study. So this shows what your aims are, or it shows where your study are going. So in a scientific research, we need to have a hypothesis. In order to prove our assumption, we need to state our hypothesis, and as the research goes on, we can see where the study is going. So next, we will define what is scientific research. So scientific research, it arises out of the need to explain things that tend to occur naturally, provide solutions to our real-world challenges, and produce technological advancements through the application of scientific principles. So scientific research is very common among STEM students, and scientific research has been discussed throughout this topic, and by defining it again, we could say that scientific research, it is a phenomenon that occurs naturally. Sometimes it is the things that we saw in our environment, and it helps us to further enhance our knowledge on the real-world problems because it is scientific again. It is most common or timely issues maybe in our country that would help us in the future. And other than that, it is what helps us advance throughout generation to generation. Without scientific research, we can't be as productive as we are today. So when in pursuit of research, you must live by what William of Ockham, an English Franciscan monk, once said: entities are not to be multiplied beyond necessity. So this quote means a big impact on research. So when doing research, when in pursuit of research, you do not need to complicate things, as complicating things will only make it hard. So since research requires testing, hypothesizing, we know that research is hard, especially for us students. But when complicating it and using more of the things that beyond on what we only need, it will only cause chaos, and we will not understand fully of what are we doing. So when we complicate things more, we will not only finish it, but rather we will be confused about the things that we should do. When doing research, it is important to focus on your goal. And that was the quote means. So, big idea, the research problem and the research process do not necessarily need to be complicated to produce good results. Sometimes, a simple research interest bring out more immense impact or have a very impactful results. So, the research problem and the research process do not necessarily need to be complicated. Since research is a very complex project or thing, we do not need to be more complicated enough in doing our research problem and research process. Since research process is already hard enough, we need a simple research problem or a research process in order for us to go through it simply and in order for us to not to be able to complicate things more. So, this research problem and research process just needs to be to present your whole research itself, but not in order to be extravagant, in order for us to be complicated. So, simple research interests bring out immense impact or have a very impactful results, which is true. As on my experience, simple research interests bring out more than researches with very complex and difficult research problem and research process, because it requires more time and effort for you to do it. And a simple tip is an easy and not so complicated research problem and research process. It will make you bring out the things that would make it impactful enough for the society and for your institution itself. So that would be all on my topic. Thank you.
Good day everyone, this is Glyzel Gulane, and now let's take the case of Archimedes' invention of the lever or Newton's law of gravity. These concepts emanated from simple observations, but their magnitude is immense. So, the impact of the research study must also be carefully estimated and not just the research problem or scientific research. But what is impact? The impact is the resulting benefits that may be gained from attaining research objectives. Usually, the impact of a study is determined over a long period of time. It does not follow that choosing the simplest and least complicated issue will have a lesser impact. You have to carefully deliberate and scrutinize the problem. Take note that what seems obvious and reasonable will not always be the easiest to explore or would bear no effect. The probable results achieved by academic research contribute to streamlining and minimizing uncertainties. Remember that these results need to be subjected to repeated measurements to withstand critical evaluations. Only if the findings endured criticisms should you accept the conclusion for the time being until proven again otherwise. Now let's move on to two types of impact, and this will be discussed by Mr. Jame Torrefiel.
These are the two types of impact. First, outcome. The first type. It is observable change after the result of the study have been accomplished. Thus, goes beyond the control of the inquiry process. Output. The second type is a recognizable change within the bound of the study. Thus, it can be measured in intangible form. Other definition of outcomes and outputs is: outcomes are what the business wants or needs to achieve. The outputs are the actions or items that contribute to achieving an outcome. In simple words, outcome is the result, while output is the product needed. Big idea. The research problem and the research process do not necessarily need to be complicated to produce good results.
Sometimes simple research interests bring out immense impact to a very impactful results.
So in our example 1, according to Mustarelli 2012, polymer electrolyte fuels such as polybenzimadazoles diversify power sources in next generation of hybrid or fully electric vehicles, offering a best alternative to naphthalene, or in other words, perfluorosulfonic acid, the leading reference target in the market. In letter A, the outcome statement here gives the following important pieces of information. A specific learning or polymer electrolyte fuel cells such as power sources in hybrid or fully electric vehicles, performance to be demonstrated or diversified in standard for an acceptable performance, offering a best alternative to naphthalene, the leading reference target in the market. In letter B, outputs originating from above can be the following. First is the various researches in polymer electrolyte fuel cells are undertaken. Next is the publications in polymer electrolyte fuel cells as power sources are disseminated. And lastly, polymer electrolyte fuel cells such as cells of various compositions are fabricated. So here in our big idea, it says that both output and outcome are products of research. Output is tangible and outcome is a specific learning. So, in getting output in research, the term output typically refers to tangible or measurable results that are produced during the research process. And these outputs can include data, experimental findings, reports, publications, prototypes, models, or any other concrete deliverables that emerge from the research activities. So basically, outputs are usually the immediate products or artifacts of the research process, while, on the other hand, an outcome, on the other hand, refers to the broader and more significant impact or learning that is derived from the research. Unlike outputs, outcomes are not necessarily tangible or directly measurable. Instead, they represent the knowledge gained, insights obtained, or changes influenced as a result of the research. Outcomes are often specific and relevant to the objectives of research study, and they can have implications for decision making, policy development, or further research. So, in summary, outputs are the tangible and measurable products that emerge from the research, while ang outcomes kay muna silang mga specific learning or broader impact resulting from the research findings. So, outputs are more immediate and concrete, whereas outcomes are more focused on the knowledge and significance gained from the research process. So, that's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Daphne Casilao and I'm going to introduce to you performance indicators. So what are performance indicators? So these are used to gauge whether the outcome is achieved or not. So before I give you a deeper meaning, I'm going to give you an example. For example here, possible performance indicators are the following. 1. A number of hybrid vehicles powered by polymer electrolyte fuel cells. 2. Percentage market location for hybrid vehicles powered by polymer electrolyte fuel cells. And number 3, improved customers' acceptability toward fuel cell powered vehicles. So on our number 1, the number of hybrid vehicles powered by polymer electrolyte fuel cells is a quantitative performance indicator measuring the quantity or volume of adoption of the technology. 2. The percentage market allocation for hybrid vehicles powered by polymer electrolyte fuel cells is also a quantitative performance indicator, but it measures the relative share of the market that is using this technology. And lastly, improved customers' acceptability toward fuel cell-powered vehicles is a qualitative performance indicator, measuring the subjective attitudes and perceptions of customers toward the technology. It assesses the level of acceptance, interest, or preference among potential customers for the new technology. So, what performance indicators? Performance indicators are measures used to evaluate the quality and impact of research activities. So, are performance indicators important to research? So, performance indicators are important in research because they help to assess the quality, productivity, and impact of research activities. By using performance indicators, researchers, institutions, and funding agencies can evaluate the effectiveness of research efforts, identifying areas for improvement, and make informed decisions about allocating resources. So, for researchers, performance indicators can be useful in several ways. They can help researchers to track their progress, set goals, and identify opportunities for collaboration or funding. By comparing their performance to that of others in their field, researchers can also gain insights into how they can improve their work and increase their impact. Furthermore, indicators can also help to identify areas where additional support may be needed. By using these indicators, researchers and institutions can work together to advance knowledge, solve problems, and make a positive impact on society. That is all. Thank you.
Good day, I am Anthony Carl C. Panilag, and today I will be explaining on my topic on how to hypothesize in a scientific matter. The hypothesis should be clear and a simple expression of what exactly do you want to attain in your research. Simply, this means that the hypothesis should exclude any judgment or opinions that the researcher might have. Therefore, it implies objectivity. In addition, a hypothesis must be written in a testable form so that you can easily discern the necessary measuring techniques to use to determine its validity. For example, the performance characteristics of polybenzimidazoles are best suited for high-temperature proton exchange membrane fuel cells, or PEMFCS, a good candidate alternative to perfluorosulfonic acid, or naphthalene. The sample hypothesis given is specific and measurable. Moreover, it clearly expresses what you intend to compare and which material you consider to apply. And sa example, ang iyang gi-compare is the performance characteristics of polybenzimidazoles and perfluorophonic acid for high temperature. So both iyang gi-compare, so it has the characteristic of a hypothesis. The hypothesis is also reflective of what you can do to explore in the study, which is if polybenzimidazoles can replace polyperfluorosulfonic acid as polymer electrolyte in high temperature PEMFCS. This means that you can reflect in your variable kung asa padulong imong study, kung asa padulong imong experiment by knowing the two variables by reflecting in your two variables.
Big idea. A hypothesis enables the researcher to discern variables and methods to be used in the study to determine its validity. So, a hypothesis is a proposed explanation or prediction that can be tested through research and observation. It serves as tentative answer to a research question and guides the researcher in designing a study to investigate a specific phenomenon or relationship. When formulating a hypothesis, the researcher identifies the variables involved in the study. Variables are factors or concepts that can vary or have different values. So in summary, a hypothesis is a statement that proposes an explanation or prediction about a research question. It helps the researcher identify the variables involved, guides the selection of appropriate research methods, and ultimately determines the validity of the study by providing a framework for testing and analyzing the data. Hypothesis in example 2 can also be verified and can relate to the current research trend, which is to look for alternative polymer electrolytes to naphthalene for fuel cell applications. In the formulation of the hypothesis, bear in mind that it should have a firm theoretical background, and that there are methods and techniques that could be adapted to enable the testing of its validity. In the case of cell application, there are so many publications dealing with the synthesis and development of various polymers for fuel cell applications. Some of these literatures have even proposed various methods and techniques to be able to characterize polymer electrolytes intended for high temperature PEMFCS. A big idea. A well-defined hypothesis is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So a well-defined hypothesis refers to a hypothesis that possesses certain characteristics that makes it effective and useful for research purposes. So first, specific. A hypothesis should be clear, concise, and focused on a particular aspect of the research question. It should identify the variables involved and provide a clear identification of what is being investigated. Measurable, a hypothesis should be formulated in a way that allows for objective measurement and evaluation. This means that the variable involved should be quantifiable, and the hypothesis should include a clear identification of how these variables will be measured or assessed. Third, achievable. A hypothesis should be realistic and feasible to the test within the available resources, time frame, and constraints of research study. It should consider the practical aspects of data collection, such as availability of participants, equipment, or necessary data sources. Relevant. A hypothesis should be directly related to the research question and have significance in context of the study. It should address an important gap in knowledge, contribute to existing theories or concepts, or have practical implications. Lastly, time-bound. A hypothesis should include a specific time frame or period within which research will be conducted and the results will be measured. By establishing a time-bound aspect, researchers can determine the duration of the study, allocate resources accordingly, and evaluate the impact or changes that may occur over time. So to conclude, these characteristics help researchers to formulate hypotheses that are clear, focused, measurable, realistic, meaningful, and have a specified time frame, thereby enhancing the effectiveness and utility of the research study.
Hello everyone, good day. I am Elphy Potayre and I'm going to discuss essential learning. A hypothesis is an intelligent guess or assertion made about your study. Hypothesis brings about clarity and direction to your study. When conceptions are made in any form of research, you have to consider testing the validity of the hypothesis. Testing a hypothesis essentials and collecting the data and then subsequently analyzing them so you may use to proceed information in determining whether the hypothesis is true or not. A hypothesis is an essential element that serves about the study. It is a statement that proposes a tentative explanation for a specific phenomena or a relationship between variables. It is important to note that hypothesis is not absolutely truth or the final conclusion. Instead, it serves as a starting point of a scientific inquiry and provide a framework for a systematic investigation. So hypothesis is an initial element of doing research, as it represents an initial guess or assertion that gives investigate of a specific phenomena. It helps structures the study, determine the research methods, and allow for the evaluating of its validity. A In deducing the direction of your study, you have to consider the potential outcomes and impact of your study. Outcomes are observable changes beyond control of the actual research process and normally require output of materialize. Outputs, on the other hand, contribute to overall outcome desired of a specific research study. If done correctly, all research covering various disciplines can generally produce notable impact. When considering the direction of the study, it is essential to evaluate the potential outcomes and impact of the research. So, these assessments help research determine the significance of their work, its relevance to the field, and its potential contribution to knowledge and society. That's all for my part.